Good morning. My name is Engineer Piyush Pandey, and the topic for today's discussion is the complete interview guide. Today, I am here to tell you that how you have to successfully participate in interviews, what are various categories of interviews, and how you have to qualify interviews. Ladies and gentlemen, interview is a process by the help of which the HR checks that whether you are eligible to work in his organization or not, whether you are having the desired qualities which are required to be the part of a particular profession or not. This is called interview. So in this process, the HR asks you certain questions, and if you are able to answer those questions, you are selected for any organization. This is called interview. Now there are certain categories of interviews also. We have structured interview, unstructured interview, stress interview, panel interview, and behavioral interview. First of all, let us discuss a structured interview. In a structured interview, the HR asks you questions in reference to the profile for which the HR is hiring, or the HR asks you question in reference to what you have mentioned in your resume. So for qualifying such type of interviews, you must be knowledgeable about the profile for which you are appearing, and you must have complete knowledge of what you have mentioned in your resume. So you should mention all your credentials very thoroughly in your resume. This is very important. Another category is unstructured interview. Unstructured interview means that HR asks you questions which are different from the profile for which he or she is hiring you. The HR tries to create a friendly atmosphere. The HR tries to discuss other things with you. It is a kind of conversation. But here you need to be very conscious, because even if it is a conversation, you should be highly professional while talking to the HR, because if you lose your professional behavior, then it becomes a point of rejection in such type of interviews. Another category is stress interview. In a stress interview, the HR tries to create a mental stress on you so that you get confused. For example, if you are answering a question, the HR might say that you have answered the question wrongly. Even if you have answered the question correctly, the HR says that you are wrong. Now, if you are confident about your knowledge, you can explain to the HR that why you are right. But if you are yourself confused, you will get more confused and you will get rejected. Sometimes it also happens that HR asks you certain question, and as you start speaking something, HR starts doing something else. HR starts focusing on his mobile phone. HR starts roaming around the room where the interview is taking place. So all these things HRs do to distract you, to check your mental stability. So you don't have to be mentally unstable. You just have to focus on the questions which are asked by the HR, and you have to answer those questions correctly. This is the criteria of qualifying stress interview. Then comes panel interview. Panel interviews are of two categories. First category is large number of HRs are taking interview of one candidate. So when large number of HRs are taking interview of one candidate, it is the responsibility of the person who is appearing in the interview that he or she has to make eye contact with everyone sitting in the panel. Doesn't matter who has asked you question. Since every HR is looking at you only, it is your responsibility that while answering any question, you have to make eye contact with every HR sitting in the panel. Some HR is asking question, and while answering, you are maintaining eye contact with only that HR. This is not good. Why? Because doesn't matter who has asked the question, everybody is looking at you. So please keep this thing in your mind. Another criteria is when large number of students are appearing in the interview and only a single HR is taking the interview. In such type of situation, since there is only one HR, the focus of all the students are on that HR only, because there is only one person who is taking your interview. Now here the problem is the HR can ask any question to anyone. Of course, HR can ask any question to anyone. So that's why you need to be highly prepared for participating in such type of interview. But sometimes it also happens that suppose the HR is asking question to some candidate. The candidate is speaking something. The HR will suddenly stop the candidate and point out any other candidate in the panel and say to the candidate, okay, this person has answered only half part. Remaining half part you explain. So here the candidates must think that, must ensure that, doesn't matter to whom the HR is asking question. The question can be forwarded to any other candidate anytime. That's why whenever somebody is speaking in this kind of interview, the rest of the candidates should be very conscious about what the person is saying. So you have to focus on the answers of every person sitting in the panel. This is the right criteria of qualifying these types of interviews. Then comes behavioral interview. Behavioral interview is also of two types. Behavioral interview for freshers is different from behavioral interview for experienced people. By behavioral interview, we mean to say that what type of behavior you actually show in the live working atmosphere. This is what we call behavioral interview. The HR wants to check that what type of behavior you actually show while doing some task inside the organization. Suppose you are an experienced person. You have 3 to 4 years of experience and you are appearing in some interview. The HR will ask you directly that what you did in your previous organization. What was the work pattern in the previous organization? What was the project on which you were working in your previous organization? Tell me the basics of those projects. Tell me what you were doing in that project. HR is going to directly ask you what you were actually doing in your last organization. It will tell the HR that what behavior you used to project while working in your projects. This is called behavioral interview. Now suppose you are a fresher. In this type of situation, the HR will give you a hypothetical situation. The HR will give you a hypothetical situation. Suppose you are working in some organization and suppose this particular thing happens. How will you tackle this situation? Suppose you are working with a machinery and suddenly this machinery stops and the entire process of industry goes down. What you will do to bring up the process of the industries? What you will do to immediately rectify the problem with the machinery? So HRs are going to ask you directly the questions which are relevant to the industrial working procedures. This is going to happen if you are a fresher. If you are a fresher, the HR is going to give you the example that, okay, suppose this is the case, how will you come out of this situation? And if you are an experienced person, the HR will ask you questions directly from your previous experiences. So this is what we call behavioral interview. So there are these 4 or 5 categories of interviews which I just told you: structured, unstructured, stress, panel and behavioral. Now this is the category of interview and you have to be very conscious while participating in these different categories of interviews so that you can successfully qualify them. But there are certain other things which are very important while participating in any interview. Number one is your dressing sense should be very good. The dressing sense for any interview is formal dress up. Formal dress up for women is different. Formal dress up for men is different. So you have to wear a formal dress whenever you are appearing in an interview. Secondly, whenever you are sitting in front of the HR, try to maintain direct eye contact with the HR. Do not interfere the HR when the HR is speaking something. If you do not know the answer of a question, directly tell the HR that, sorry sir, sorry ma'am, I do not know the answer. If you guess or if you speak wrong, it is the biggest point of irritation for the HR and you may get rejected. So if you do not know the answer of a question, please say it directly that, sir, ma'am, sorry, I do not know the answer. Do not give any wrong information about yourself in your resume. For example, suppose you are appearing for a computer engineer profile and you have a good knowledge of C++. Do not mention in your resume that you have good knowledge of C++ and Java and Linux and every other thing that you have studied in your semesters. No, mention only that thing which you know exactly and properly. Because if the HR asks any question in reference to what you have mentioned in your CV and you are not able to answer that question, the HR will clearly know that your CV is fake. HR will say that your CV is fake. You have mentioned wrong information. You have mentioned something which you do not know. This is very important. Another crucial aspect is how you write your email ID in your resume. Email ID should be highly professional. For example, if my name is Piyush Pandey, I will write piyushpandey@gmail.com or piyush.pandey@gmail.com or Piyush Kumar Pandey@gmail.com. This is the right way of mentioning your email ID in your CV. But what impression it is going to give if I write Piyush Pandey, dangerous man @gmail.com, Piyush Pandey, flying machine @gmail.com. Now this is very odd. Piyush Pandey, dangerous man @gmail.com. What is the meaning of Piyush Pandey, dangerous man? For what post I am applying? I am an engineer. So please do not write such type of fancy email IDs. What happens as students? We make use of such type of fancy email IDs, but when we are appearing in front of the HR during some interview, we forget to remove that email ID. We mention the same email ID on our resume, and when the HR looks at our email ID, the HR gets irritated. What is the meaning of Piyush Pandey, dangerous man? How dare you say that you are dangerous, right? So HR are very, very critical, not only about how you appear in interview, not only about how you answer the questions in the interview, but also about how professional you are. The first quality which the HR looks in you is your professionalism. After that, knowledge comes. Knowledge only comes after professional behavior. And these are the things which display your professionalism in front of HR. Use of email ID. Then one more big mistake which people do while writing resume is they do not mention their PIN code while mentioning their address. Always mention your PIN code with your address. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. First thing is email ID. Another important thing is always mention your PIN code. This is very, very important. And then you have to mention all the necessary things, all the achievements that you have done in your life systematically in your resume. Try to mention all the good qualities which are relevant to the profile for which you are getting hired. Try to mention all the courses that you have done, all the additional courses, all the additional certificates and languages that you have done in reference to the profile for which you are getting hired. It will give a good impression of you in front of the HR, and your chances of getting hired will increase. But as I said, do not mention those things about which you do not know, because if HR asks you something which you do not know, you will not be able to answer the question, and the HR will come to know that you have mentioned only false information in your resume. This is again going to spoil your credibility in front of the HR. It is going to spoil your reputation in front of the HR, and the chances are you will get rejected. So always mention all the necessary and important details in your resume. Mention the languages that you know. Mention the projects that you have done. Mention the seminars and conferences in which you have participated. Mention the details of the research papers that you have written. Mention the details of competitions where you have participated or where you have got some award. These are your real credibility. These are your real credibility which you can mention in your resume. And since you have achieved that award, you feel very proud while mentioning it in your resume. Since you have undergone some technical training, you feel very proud when you mention it in your resume that yes, I have undergone this kind of specific training which has upgraded my personality. So if you have genuinely done something creative in your life and then you are mentioning it in your resume, this is the best thing. Because when the HR is going to ask questions related to these things, you will be able to answer these things. But if you mention fake information, you will be caught by the HR when you will not be able to answer the question. So these are the things which you keep in your mind while preparing resume. So be very conscious about participating in interviews and be very conscious while preparing your resume, because your resume is the first point of contact during any kind of face-to-face interview with the HR. That's all for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you loved my today's video. Please subscribe my channel, You Are Piyush Pandey, Trainer, B.Tech MBA, and please press the bell icon for constant updates. Thank you very much. Have a great day.